We all know the most tragic image in history: a Roman governor standing on a terrace in Jerusalem, washing his hands, while an enraged crowd cries out for the crucifixion of an innocent man. We all know that on that Good Friday, Pontius Pilate signed the death sentence of Jesus of Nazareth. But have you ever wondered what happened afterward? What did that man do that very evening, when the crowd had dispersed, when the sky above Golgotha had turned black as night in the middle of the day, and when the earth shook so violently that rocks were split apart? Let me reveal a detail that history books often leave out. Pontius Pilate could not simply go to sleep. As prefect of the Roman Empire, he had a formal, unavoidable, and absolute duty. He had to take a parchment, dip his pen into the ink, and write an official dispatch. A detailed report to be sent directly to Rome, into the hands of Emperor Tiberius, explaining those cosmic events and the later, inexplicable disappearance of the body of the condemned man. That document existed, and its contents were so shocking, so undeniable, that the early church fathers openly challenged the Emperor of Rome to go into his own secret archives and read it. Today, in this video, we will break the seals of history. We will discover what Pontius Pilate wrote to Rome the day after the death of Jesus, and the irrefutable historical evidence that made the greatest empire in the world tremble. To understand the immense significance of this mystery, we must first step into the mindset of ancient Rome. The Roman Empire did not rule the world only with swords and legions, but with bureaucracy. Rome was a perfect administrative machine. Every abnormal atmospheric event, every rebellion, every execution of a significant political prisoner had to be recorded in the so-called Acta Diurna and Acta Senatus, the official records of the state. No governor in any province could omit crucial information without risking his life under charges of treason. Now imagine Pontius Pilate's situation during that Passover weekend in the year 33 AD, or 30 AD according to some calculations. Pilate was not a fool. He was a cold, calculating military man. He knew perfectly well that the execution of a carpenter from Galilee by itself would not have interested Emperor Tiberius. But what surrounded that death could not be hidden. His wife, Claudia Procula, whom tradition even honors as a saint in some Eastern churches, had begged him, terrified by a prophetic dream, not to condemn that righteous man. And Pilate had seen with his own eyes the veil of the temple in Jerusalem torn in two from top to bottom. He had heard the report of the Roman centurion, one of his own men, a soldier hardened by 1,000 battles, who returned from the foot of the cross beating his chest and declaring, "Truly, this man was the Son of God." And even more serious for the security of the empire, on Sunday morning Pilate received the news that the tomb, sealed with the imperial stamp of Rome and guarded by heavily armed soldiers, had been found empty. The Roman guards, trained to die rather than fail a mission, had fled in terror, speaking of beings of light and an earthquake. Pilate had to write to Tiberius, and he did. This report, known in antiquity as the Acts of Pilate, not to be confused with the later falsified versions, traveled by sea from Judea to the heart of Rome, where it was sealed in the imperial archives. But how do we know that this document really existed? Is it just a Christian legend? Absolutely not. And here we come to one of the most thrilling and courageous moments in the entire history of the Church. It is the year 150 AD. Christians were being persecuted, thrown to the lions, used as human torches. In this climate of absolute terror, an immense figure rises up. Saint Justin Martyr, one of the greatest philosophers and apologists of the early Church. Justin decides to write an apology, an official letter of defense, addressed to none other than the reigning emperor, Antoninus Pius, and to the Roman Senate. And to prove that Jesus had performed extraordinary miracles, had healed the sick, and had been crucified, Justin does not quote the Gospels. He knew that the emperor would not care at all about Christian texts. Listen carefully to the exact words St. Justin wrote to the most powerful man in the world, and that he did these things you can learn from the acts which were made under Pontius Pilate. And shortly afterward, speaking of the crucifixion, he repeats, that these things did happen, you can ascertain from the acts made under Pontius Pilate. Pause for a moment and reflect on the weight of that statement. Think about it. No sane man would dare say to a Roman emperor, "Go check your secret archives," unless he were absolutely certain that the document was there. It would have been political and intellectual suicide. If Pilate's report had not existed, the emperor would have needed 3 minutes to refute Justin and discredit Christianity forever. But no one refuted Justin, because those records were there, and he was not the only one. About 50 years later, another giant of the church, Tertullian, a brilliant Roman lawyer converted to Christianity, renewed the challenge. Addressing the Roman magistrates, he wrote with disarming confidence, "All these things concerning Christ, Pilate himself, who in his conscience was already a Christian, announced to Tiberius, the Caesar of that time." But what exactly did this secret dispatch contain? Although the original document has been lost, or, as many believe, deliberately destroyed during the great persecutions of Diocletian in order to erase the evidence, its contents filtered down through history. One of the central points in Pilate's report concerned the darkness that covered the land. And here the story becomes even more incredible, because Christianity finds an unexpected ally: pagan historians and astronomers. The Romans were obsessed with the stars, and 2 ancient historians, who had no interest in helping Christians, confirmed the impossible. The first was Thallus, a historian who wrote around 52 AD. He desperately tried to explain the darkness at Christ's death as a normal solar eclipse. But another intellectual, Julius Africanus, categorically refuted him by reminding everyone of a basic scientific fact. Christ was crucified during the Jewish Passover, which always falls during a full moon. And it is scientifically and astronomically impossible for a solar eclipse to occur during a full moon. Moreover, another Greek pagan historian, Phlegon of Tralles, wrote these precise words in his annals, preserved in the Roman archives. In the 4th year of the 202nd Olympiad, which corresponds exactly to the year 33 AD, there was an eclipse of the sun, greater than any previously known. At the 6th hour of the day it became night, so that the stars appeared in the sky, and a great earthquake in Bithynia overturned most of the city of Nicaea. The Romans knew the universe itself had recorded the death of its creator, and Pilate had to confirm these unnatural disasters in his letter. Over the centuries, copies of texts called the Acts of Pilate began to circulate, and these were later merged into what we know as the Apocryphal Gospel of Nicodemus. Although the Church did not include this text in the official Bible because it contains later literary embellishments, scholars agree that it preserves a formidable core of historical truth, derived precisely from the testimony of the Romans who were present that day. According to these texts, Pilate harshly questioned the centurions who had been guarding the tomb. Remember? In the canonical Gospels, Matthew tells us that the Jewish priests paid the Roman guards to say that the disciples had stolen the body while they were asleep. But do you really think a ruthless Roman governor like Pilate would have accepted the excuse, "We were asleep"? For a Roman soldier, falling asleep on duty meant immediate death. Ancient traditions tell us that standing before Pilate, the soldiers broke down. They told the truth. They confessed that they had seen an angel descend from heaven whose appearance was like lightning, that they had become like dead men from fear, and that they had witnessed the resurrection. Pilate, a pagan steeped in superstition, was overcome with fear. He had killed a god. And what happened when Pilate's dispatch finally arrived in Rome, into the hands of Emperor Tiberius? Here we once again rely on the writings of Tertullian, and we find ourselves before one of the greatest what-if moments in human history. Tertullian says that Tiberius, after reading the detailed report about Jesus' miracles, his unjust condemnation, the darkening of the sun, and the resurrection confirmed by his own soldiers, was deeply shaken. He did not think it was some Jewish fable. On the contrary, Tiberius took Pilate's report and brought it before the Roman Senate. His proposal was astonishing. He officially asked the Senate to consecrate Christ, that is, to place Jesus of Nazareth in the pantheon of Rome's official gods, thus allowing Christians to pray freely. The Emperor of the world wanted to legalize Christianity only months after the death of Jesus, based solely on the evidence sent by Pilate. But the Roman Senate opposed him. Why? Out of pure political pride. According to ancient Roman law, a new deity could not be approved by the emperor unless it had first been examined and voted on by the Senate. The senators felt bypassed by Tiberius's enthusiasm and rejected the proposal, declaring Christianity a superstitio illicita, an unlawful religion. Tiberius, outraged, nevertheless held to his personal conviction and, according to Tertullian, threatened death to anyone who falsely accused Christians during his reign. But the Senate's refusal became the seal of a tragedy. From that negative vote came 300 years of brutal persecution. 300 years in which millions of martyrs gave their lives in arenas and catacombs to defend the truth of that empty tomb. A truth that Rome's secret documents had known from the very first day. And Pontius Pilate? What became of the man who held in his hands the life of the Son of God, who recognized his innocence, who certified the miracles, yet who out of human cowardice handed him over to death? History was not merciful to him. Only a few years after the crucifixion, he fell into disgrace. He was removed from his post in Judea because of his excessive cruelty toward the Samaritans and was recalled to Rome. With no more power and no more glory, tradition passes down stories of a man tormented by remorse. Eusebius of Caesarea, historian of the ancient church, reports that Pilate ended up in exile, perhaps in Gaul, in what is now France, where, overwhelmed by despair and haunted by the ghosts of that Good Friday, he took his own life. The man who had tried to wash his hands of the truth ended up drowning in his own error. A tragic spiritual lesson for all of us. One cannot remain neutral before Jesus Christ. Either one accepts him as Lord, or one is lost. Dear friends, we have traveled through the centuries and into the secret archives of the most powerful empire of antiquity. The ancient Romans tried to suppress the truth. The original documents may have burned, or may have been hidden in some impenetrable underground vault during the persecutions. But the power of truth cannot be archived. We do not need a piece of parchment in order to believe in the resurrection. We have evidence in Phlegon, in Thallus, in the letters of St. Justin, but above all, we have living proof in the blood of the martyrs and in the sacraments of our Church, which has remained standing for 2,000 years against the storms of history. Jesus Christ is historically real, his passion is historically attested, and his forgiveness is available today at this very moment for anyone who draws near to him. I ask you to subscribe to the channel, share this video with your friends, with those who doubt, with those who think faith is only an invention. Show them the evidence. And finally, I invite you to flood the comment section below with a very short prayer. Lord Jesus, I believe in you. Your cross is my salvation. May the peace of Christ and the blessing of Almighty God come down upon us all.